The new lawyers for serial baby killer Lucy Letby will say that they will reveal new medical evidence this morning, which they say could cast doubt over her convictions.
The neonatal nurse is serving 15 whole life orders in prison for the murder of 7 infants and the attempted murder of 7 more. Well, Mark McDonald joins us now. You are her new defence barrister.
Correct.
So you didn't represent Lucy Letby in either of those trials?
No, I was instructed in September of last year.
So why have you come on board?
So, a couple of reasons. I've been dealing with miscarriages of justice now for the last 20 years. And so this is a case that mirrored a number of other cases that came before it. There are currently 4 nurses serving life in prison for harming patients. Each one of them mirror each other in the way that they were presented to the jury. It's important that one realises that there was no direct evidence here. No one saw her do any harm to any patient. At the time, when babies did die, there were post-mortems that found no malicious harm was done to any of the children. And so it was years later, looking back, that they came up with a theory of how each baby died and what they said she'd done. So it's all based upon a hypothesis that was presented to the jury, one that we now say is highly unreliable.
Before we get to the evidence you're going to present, which has already been discussed, just for us to understand, because there'll be lots of our viewers who watched the trial in detail, they saw the scientific evidence, the expert evidence, but also the testimony of colleagues and also the sentencing. If Lucy Letby did not kill deliberately these babies, murder these babies, what is the alternative view that you have and the case has about what happened? Was there somebody else? Was it natural causes? Was there negligence and even cover-up in the hospital? How do you... I think people want to know, to understand. So,
I can understand that.
So what's the alternative explanation?
So the stark reality is that if she did not commit any crimes, it could be that no crime was ever committed. And what we know, and what you've discussed on this programme many times, that there are a number of hospitals across the country over the last couple of decades that have had crisis, that babies have died, that obstetric units that have failed. And we've got public inquiries going on in a number of different hospitals as to why there's been a spike in deaths. And here, it all started with a belief that there's been a spike in deaths. But what they didn't do is actually compare it with other neonatal units across the country where there have been equal spikes, and in one case, even higher spikes in neonatal deaths. By just looking at a picture of one hospital and saying, here's a spike in deaths, something has gone wrong, who is to blame for that something gone wrong? Oh, that nurse is always on duty, she must be responsible. Once that ball started to raise... Now, what they did to hospital, they took it seriously. They had internal inquiries. They had an external professional body to come in and do a full review, and none of them found that there was a problem with one particular nurse or doctor on duty.
There have been 2 trials at which she has been found guilty.
Yes.
She has been sentenced.
Yes.
She is serving multiple whole life orders. She will never be released from prison.
Correct.
The families in these cases need to know justice has been done. And justice is usually done in courts.
Yes.
So if this evidence was there at the time of her trials, surely that would have been tested to the limit by the court process already. I'm just thinking of the distress to the families
No,
of these
I get
babies,
that, and I fully understand that.
who believe that the person responsible for their child's death is now serving the right sentence and are now going to be thinking, why are you even questioning whether she did this or not when it has been tried and proven in court?
You know, every miscarriage of justice that's happened in the last 4 decades has started off with people being convicted. The Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4. There were victims in those bombs as well, those bombings that took place in Belford, in Birmingham and in Guildford, and they went before a jury and they were convicted. And they were on the front page of every newspaper and they were described as evil. And later it found that evidence proved that they actually didn't commit the crime and they were exonerated. Sometimes things do go wrong in criminal trials. Sometimes juries do make errors and people are convicted, and it's only later when fresh evidence comes forward. We have to remember that in this trial, the defence did not call any expert evidence in relation to neonatology that contradicted that was given forward by the prosecution.
Why didn't they?
They didn't rely upon any evidence and didn't put anything in the witness box.
And if you'd been the defence barrister, you'd have done it differently?
Well, I'm not saying I would have done it difficultly, because I know that they were represented by an excellent King's Counsel and a brilliant solicitor. So I'm not criticising the defence team. I'm just saying the stark reality is that the complete picture, the picture that now I've created, and not just me, but the team that are working with me in relation to numerous neonatologists across the world and brilliant neonatologists that work in this country, have put together evidence that says that evidence by the prosecution in relation to what they say took place to these babies is wholly unreliable.
Is it the case that the prosecution in the case relied on a report that was written a number of years ago by a neonatal expert, that expert says was misinterpreted?
We're referring to the prosecution expert.
Yeah.
He wasn't a neonatologist, he was a paediatrician.
No, sorry, I'm not talking...
Dr. Shu Lee's report from 15 years
I'm sorry, I've misunderstood your question. Yes, you're right. Dr. Shu Lee had written a paper some 30 years previously in relation to air embolism and how you can identify that air embolism is there in a particular
Which was seen as the cause of death in these babies.
Yeah, and he has said publicly they totally misused his research. And in fact, he's done a full literature review now and said that what was presented before the jury in relation to a particular symptom was wrong.
And he's appearing with you today?
Yes, no, so what he has done is he has contacted 14 leading neonatologists across the world in Tokyo, Sweden, Germany, Harvard. He's put them all together and they have looked and assessed everything and come up with a conclusion.
Just very quickly, because we need to move on, but you're a very reputable barrister.
Yes.
David Davis, a very reputable Member of Parliament.
Yes.
There is online huge conspiracies now of people who say this is all an establishment cover-up. Does that help or damage your cause, all of that? I take absolutely no notice. My focus is ensuring that the evidence that I have now gathered goes before a court or goes before the Criminal Cases Review Commission, and if they feel that the conviction is unsafe, overturning this conviction. The noise on the outside, I'm afraid, is just noise. I focus on the conviction.
OK. Thank you. Mark McDonald, thanks very much indeed. And you'll be presenting your new medical evidence at this press conference.
Yes, that's correct.
Very shortly. A Crown Prosecution Service spokesperson said 2 juries and 3 appeal court judges reviewed a multitude of different strands of evidence against Lucy Letby. She's been convicted of 15 separate counts following 2 separate jury trials. And if you're affected by those issues, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.